our Sunday worship service at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of York. I am Sherry Lukowski, and I will be helping to lead our service this morning. Today, as we bid goodbye to our summer worship schedule, and we welcome back Reverend Terry from her vacation, our service is dedicated to Labor Day, a federal holiday that honors the contribution of workers to our national life. We especially lift up today the courage and dedication of healthcare workers everywhere, doctors, nurses, technicians, and all those who have risked their health and safety by working to take care of the victims of COVID-19. We offer more than 6 million thank yous and our prayers to all of them, in particular, the families of the hundreds of healthcare workers, over 600 at the last count, who have died from the pandemic here in the US. This Sunday, we are pleased to share with you again music played by our music director, Gretchen Decker, as well as some other musical pieces. Our service this morning is brought to you via Zoom, thanks to the latest edition of our UUCY staff, Grant de Guzman, as well as Robert Felton and Doug Hober, who are in the sanctuary this morning. Grant is a student at York College and will be helping us out on Sunday mornings during the church year. And so we come together again this morning for worship and fellowship as, in the chat box, we greet old friends and new visitors alike. In keeping with our Unitarian Universalist tradition, we light a chalice before our service. We invite you to light a candle at home as well. Our chalice lighting words today are, "We hold hope close," by Reverend Teresa Soto. In this community, we hold hope close. We don't always know what comes next, but that cannot dissuade us. We don't always know just what to do, but that does not mean we are lost in the wilderness. We rely on the certainty beneath the foundation of our values and ethics. We are the people who return to love, like returning to the North Star, and to the truth that we are greater together than we are alone. Our hope does not live in some glimmer of an indistinct future. Rather, we know the way to the world of which we dream, and by covenant and movement forward of one right action and the next, we will know that one day we will arrive at home.
I'd like to thank all of you watching from home for your patience as we experienced a failure in our internet connection. I'd like to read you some words of welcome by Reverend Dick Gilbert. Dick was one of the ministers who marched with Dr. King during the marches in Selma back in the 1960s. We bid you, weary spirits seeking rest, who come with troubles that are too much with you, who come hurt and afraid. We bid you welcome, who come with hope in your heart, who come with anticipation in your step, who come proud and joyous. We bid you welcome, who are seekers of a new faith, who come to probe and explore, who come to learn. Missing my page today. We bid you welcome, who enter into this virtual hall as a homecoming, who have found here room for your Spirit. We find in this people a family. Whoever you are, whatever you are, wherever you are on your journey, we bid you welcome. Thank you for being here. We'll now go into our first hymn, For All That Is Our Life, number 128. It will be playing on your screen. If you know the words, please feel free to, and I hope you will, sing along at home or wherever you are with us. Do you think that mic will work now?
Life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. For each which other serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our
So this being Labor Day weekend, and a weekend during which I've been spending a lot of time thinking about our children, our story for all ages today is a story about two children who participated in real events, a march on the President's House in Oyster Bay, New York. It's called On Our Way to Oyster Bay, Mother Jones and Her March for Children's Rights. It's been written by Monica Culling. And again, this is a story about events that actually happened. We join the story as two children, Gussie and Aidan, are thinking about joining the march. Grabbing a sign, 8-year-old Aidan joined the other striking cotton mill workers. He was a doffer. For 12 hours, 6 days a week, he and other boys removed full bobbins from the clacking spinning frames. Aidan's friend Gussie was a spinner at the mill. When the thread broke, she quickly repaired it by tying the two ends together. Knowing Aidan couldn't read, Gussie read his sign to him. It says, "We want to go to school." Aidan did want to go to school, but his family needed the money he earned. This was the way things were for many children in 1909. There was excitement on the picket line that day. Someone named Mother Jones was coming. She helped workers fight for better wages and safer working conditions. When Aidan met her, he wondered how. She looks like someone's granny, he whispered to Gussie. Later, Aidan was even more surprised when Mother Jones talked to his mom, and Gussie's too, into letting them join a march from Kensington, Pennsylvania to Oyster Bay, New York, over 100 miles away. In her travels, Mother Jones had met hundreds of children working in factories and mills. Many were missing fingers, and some were even missing their hands. Troubled by all she had seen, Mother Jones wanted to end child labor. But what could she do? Why, organize a children's march and bring the message right to President Teddy Roosevelt at his summer home in Oyster Bay, of course. A few days after arriving in Kensington, Mother Jones gathered 200 workers, including an excited Aidan and Gussie and dozens of other children. They marched out of town playing flutes, beating drums, and waving flags. Mother was leading the way to Oyster Bay. The first day of the march seemed like it would never end, but Aidan and Gussie kept on going. All the same, they were very happy when Mother Jones shouted, "Camp time!" While the tents were being set up, Mother Jones helped some of the women make a large pot of stew. It smelled heavenly. Aidan and Gussie ate until they couldn't eat anymore, and later, under a blanket of stars, they slept as soundly as hibernating bears. And the mosquitoes were biting. A few of the marchers quit, but not Aidan and Gussie. They enjoyed walking through the fields of buttercups and visiting new towns, and it felt good to be doing something so important. Besides, if old Mother Jones could walk this far, why couldn't they? Aidan wasn't the only one in the group who couldn't read. At the end of each day, Mother Jones read the daily news aloud in her soothing Irish lilt. Some of the stories were even about the march. The march wasn't all buttercups and sunshine, though. One day, the rain fell in torrents, making the dirt roads sloppy with thick mud. By nightfall, Aidan and Gussie were exhausted. Somehow, Mother Jones convinced the mayor of the next town to let the marchers spend the night in an empty meeting hall. Soaked to the skin, everyone was grateful for a dry place to rest and a dinner. "She's something," whispered Aidan before dropping off to sleep. The following morning, Mother Jones made a welcome announcement. "Today we've earned a break, haven't we?" Aidan and Gussie shouted, "Yes, ma'am." Neither had ever ridden on a train before. At first, Gussie and Aidan chased each other up and down the aisle. Once they'd had enough of that, they watched the passing scenery. It helped them forget how much they missed their homes and their families. When they arrived, 3,000 people were gathered in the town's public park to go and speak. "All these people care about us," said an astounded Aidan. Gussie was so amazed she could only nod. Mother Jones spoke with force. "These children work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. They work while other children go to school, play games, and enjoy life." Inspired, and maybe a bit humbled, many of the townspeople offered their support and places to stay. Finally, over 2 weeks after the march started, the remaining 30 marchers arrived in New York City. It was their last stop before Oyster Bay. Mother Jones was expecting to hold a parade through the city streets and to speak at Madison Square Garden. But the mayor of America's largest city wouldn't allow her to do either. Not one to take no for an answer, Mother Jones simply turned to the marchers and shouted, "Follow me, everyone." Stopping at the corner of 24th Street and 4th Avenue, Mother Jones held her meeting. More than 1,000 people gathered to listen while traffic whizzed around them. After the speech, the group started to prepare for the last stretch of the march. But Mother Jones had other plans. We're going to Coney Island, she said. Gussie gave Aidan a puzzled look, and Aidan just shrugged. Coney Island was great fun. Aidan and Gussie ate foods they'd never had before, popcorn and peanuts and hot dogs. They went on rides called Razzle Dazzle, a circle that spun them dizzy, and Helter Skelter, a slide that took their breaths away. They even saw two girls riding on a camel. Although it was a day for having fun, Mother Jones used every opportunity to speak out. While Aidan and Gussie were looking at the wild animals, Mother Jones pulled them close and spoke to people who were gathered nearby. These children are as trapped as the animals in those cages. They are chained to the mills because they're poor and cannot break away. They suffer while you enjoy luxury. These were hard words, but they were the truth. The next day, the marchers walked the last 35 miles to Oyster Bay. It was a long, weary march, but finally they stood on the lawn of the president's summer home, waiting expectantly for him to appear. But President Roosevelt wouldn't speak with Mother Jones. "We've come from so far away," said Gussie. Aidan was angry as well as disappointed. How could he do that to us? It's not fair. Mother Jones put her arms around them. She could only agree. On the train back home, everyone was quiet. Only Mother Jones understood what they had achieved with their march. Many people now see that children don't belong in factories and mills, but in schools, she reminded them. Education will bring society close to what we want. Fairness for all, and a better world in which to live. Aidan thought about that. He was proud that he and Gussie had marched with Mother Jones. One day, he would learn to read, and when change came for mill workers, he would be part of that as well. And so ends our story, and how grateful we are that the times in which we live, children are not, in our country at least, chained to factories, even though during the pandemic, they may feel that they are somewhat chained at home. Thanks so much for listening.
Worked in a cotton mill all of my life. All I got is a bottle of knives. Hard times, cotton mill girls, hard times everywhere. Hard times, cotton mill girls, hard times, cotton mill girls. Hard times, cotton mill girls, hard times everywhere. We kids, we work 12 hours a day for 14 cents and easy gains. Hard times, cotton mill girls, hard times everywhere. Hard times, cotton mill girls, hard times, cotton mill girls. Hard times, cotton mill girls, hard times everywhere.
At this time in our service, we pause and ask you to make an online financial contribution to our Sunday offering. Our offering not only helps to support the work of this congregation, it helps to support our Share the Plate partners. This month, our Share the Plate partner is March on Harrisburg. Information on how to give online was included in the email that accompanied your order of service. And a link will also be shared in the chat box. We invite you to watch this short video by Rabbi Michael Pollack, who is the president of March on Harrisburg. Rabbi Pollack is well known to those of us who have enjoyed his leadership when we have participated in March on Harrisburg events.
Hello, this is Michael Pollack with March on Harrisburg, and this is what I look like 6 months into not having a haircut. Thank you very much for your support of March on Harrisburg. We are a statewide, nonpartisan, volunteer-driven organization. We have 7 chapters across the state, and we lobby, we march, we do direct action, we organize, we educate, and we fight for democracy. Our goal is to make Pennsylvania one of the least corrupt states in the country. So what are we talking about when we talk about corruption? We are talking about the government being set up in such a way that the will of the people has a non-significant impact on the decisions made by the government, a disconnect between government and people. Corruption keeps the will of the people from being heard in our halls of power. As long as there is unlimited gifts and unlimited campaign contributions and unlimited dark money and all of these ways for our political system to be bought, well, then our politicians are going to be bought, and they're going to represent the interests of the people who buy them, not the people who vote for them. And so we have to fight for democracy. We have to take our democracy where it's never been before, because this status quo that we're living through, when decisions that govern our lives are being made without our input, without our consent, well, that type of a system just collapses in on itself in suffering and chaos. And that's what we're living through right now. And so we need to fight for our democracy. We need to fight for voting rights. We need to fight to end big money in politics. We need to fight to end gerrymandering. And that's the fight that we're fighting. So thank you very much for your support. And frankly, even more than your donations, ask Carol Stowell how you can help out, how you can help the March on Harrisburg chapter in York, because we need your donations, there's no doubt, but we also need your people power. We need your involvement. So thank you very much for considering March on Harrisburg, and I hope you're all doing all right.
We give thanks for the many blessings we have, and we acknowledge the generosity of spirit expressed through your offerings. Thank you for these generous donations. May we use these gifts wisely and well.
I'm going to invite you to join in a short moment of prayer and meditation. Feel free to turn off the video on your screen if that would help you focus on the prayer some more. Please pray with me or share a moment of meditation as the Spirit moves you. Spirit of life, Spirit of love, God of many names and none. Pray today for peace in this world as there's so much turmoil around us. We pray for those who are marching peacefully, and we ask that all marches can be peaceful. We pray for those who have died on both sides of our political divide in the violence that has shaken our country this past several months. We pray for the victims of violence, police violence and other violence, and we pray for Black lives. We pray for all lives as well. Holy One, be with those who are remembering family members who have passed some time ago. Be with those who are with family members now who are at their end of life. Students and the school kids in the colleges and universities. We pray that this pandemic will end very soon. Be with us now. Be with us in the months ahead. Give us strength. Give us courage. Give us hope. Let us not forget. We are members of a community of love, a community of memory, and a community of belonging. Spirit of life and love, may it be so. Blessed be, and amen. A few words about John Prine's life. John Prine was a very well-known composer and folk singer. He was known as the Mark Twain of songwriters. And he died back in April of the COVID-19 virus. So with this song, we remember his life and his contribution to music in our world. Thank you, Robert.
We had an apartment in the city, and me and Loretta liked living there. Well, it's been years since the kids have grown a life of their own and left us alone. John and Linda live in Omaha, and Joe is somewhere on the road. And we lost Davy in the Korean War, and I still don't know what for. It don't matter anymore. You know that old trees just grow stronger, and old rivers grow wilder every day. Old people just grow lonesome, waiting for someone to say hello in there, hello. Me and Loretta, we don't talk much more. She sits and stares through the back door screen, and all the news just repeats itself like some forgotten dream that we both sing. Someday I'll go and call up Rudy. We work together at the factory. But what can I say if he asks what's new? Nothing, what's with you? Nothing much to do. You know that old trees just grow stronger, and old rivers grow wilder every day. people just grow lonesome, waiting for someone to say hello in there, hello. So if you're out walking down the street sometime and spot some hollow ancient ass, well, please don't just pass them by and stare as if you didn't care. Say hello in there, hello.
My daughter asked me recently what do I remember about growing up. I told her I remember summer. Those 7 weeks of freedom from school, from routine. Whole chapters of your childhood spanned across some unpredictable Scottish sunshine. The summer I learned to ride a bike. The summer we got a paddling pool. The summer I fell from a tree and broke my arm. Spent the rest day in a stookie. Then there was the longest summer. The one that started when it was cold and seemed to last forever. I thought I knew it was happening, but I didn't really. I knew within my own wee world, within our wee house that we never seemed to leave. Doing PE in the living room, my dad not knowing how to bake, my mum sharing her office with a washing machine, being homeschooled, masks, endlessly washing my hands, my friends only existing in a screen. But thinking about that now, after all these years, that summer looks different. Quiet roads, clear skies, sun that made me want to shield my eyes. Stepping aside on the pavement, trying to cross the road like you meant it. Keeping hands by your side, trying not to touch the world in front of my eyes. We don't rush, we wander slow, walking for the first time with nowhere much to go. But there are signs that life's still here, not hid inside, but waiting to appear. And the longest summer I have known, what do I remember now? It's gone. The way the world had to transform, or the rainbows come after the storm. It's the longest summer I have known. Wasn't one I lived through on my own. You change yourself to change the norm, and then rainbows come after the storm. Explore small, choose a different route to be the trail. outside. Now there's different places where we spend our time. Close friends stand apart, but somehow they seem closer to one another's heart. More alive than before, as everyone remembers what's still outside their door. These are signs that the light's still here, not locked inside, but waiting, waiting to appear. And the longest summer I have known, what do I remember now? It's gone. The way the world had to transform, all the rainbows come after the storm. It's the longest summer I have known, was the one I lived through on my own. You change yourself to change the norm, and the rainbows come after the storm.
Rainbows come after the storm.
So this summer now ending is probably not going to stand out in our memories as the greatest summer of all time in our lives. Far from it. Forgive me if I've shared with you before some of my own memories of summers in my childhood. I grew up in England, which is known for its rainy weather. And in my childhood summers, my parents were very keen campers. And every summer we would pack two small cars with tents and go camping in parts of the English countryside, in the Lake District or Cornwall or North Wales. And camping in the UK back then in the 60s and 70s was not like camping is in the United States. We would camp in farmers' fields for the night, and there would be cattle grazing as we slept. I have fond memories of hearing the sound of cattle munching grass while I tried to sleep in the middle of a field. And our camping trips were so soggy and so wet and cold and damp and often miserable. I should never forget those summer camping trips as long as I live. And my favorite memory of summer was the summer after my 16th birthday that I got a job on a horse riding stables. It was a place where riding lessons were given by a former member of the British Olympic equestrian team, and I got a free riding lesson every day instead of being paid for my labors, and all the time I wanted to exercise horses and ride horses across the English countryside. And by the end of that summer, it's 50 years ago, it's hard to believe, I was just a fabulous horseback rider. I could jump fences and go all over the place and do dressage. I was really good, but of course, it's all gone now. This summer now ending has been unlike any summers any of us have ever known, and certainly wasn't what we expected to experience back in January. And it's hard to ignore the gorgeous weather that nature has shared with us this fabulous Labor Day weekend. And like many of you, I'm just itching to get outside and hit one of the trails and take my binoculars and do some bird watching, or sit outside and just enjoy the sun. But tomorrow being Labor Day, I think it's appropriate to remind ourselves about some of the sacrifices that some of our fellow Pennsylvanians have made in generations past, and to think of them and to keep them in our hearts, as well as those workers who are sacrificing their health and safety today in 2020 as we enjoy the long summer weekend. Pennsylvania was at the forefront of the Industrial Revolution, being the center of the steel industry as well as others. So it isn't surprising that Pennsylvania's working families have been in the forefront of making contributions to the American labor movement way back when. I'd like to pick out just two events to lift up today. One was the 1892 strike by steel workers at the Carnegie Steel Plant in a town called Homestead, Pennsylvania, which is just south of Pittsburgh. The strike was brutally suppressed by agents of the Pinkerton Detective Agency, and the strike spawned a song. Father was killed by the Pinkerton man. The lyrics began, "'Twas in Pennsylvania town not very long ago, men struck against reduction of their pay. Their millionaire employer with philanthropic show had closed the works till starved they would obey. They fought for home and the right to live where they had toiled so long, but ere the sun had set, some were laid low." I'd like to lift up the steel workers from the town of McKees Rocks, Pennsylvania, a few miles down the Ohio River from Pittsburgh, where in 1909, between 5,000 and 8,000, mostly immigrants from across the seas, from 16 different nationalities, were engaged in building railroad cars. On July 10th, 1909, which was their normal payday, their workers showed up to get paid and received a lot less than they had been expecting. 40 riveters refused to work for 3 days. When they went back to work, they were fired. Within 48 hours, all 5,000 of them went on strike. There was violence and confrontation, but eventually these workers prevailed, unlike the workers in Homestead a few years before. I lift up those memories today because they're not things that people are taught in school that much these days, and they're an important part of American history and Pennsylvania history. And on this Labor Day, I think it's right to remember them. America was built by working people, and especially for the first 3 centuries after European discovery, by enslaved people. And it's ordinary working folk who are sustaining us during the COVID-19 pandemic. The meat packers whose lives are being endangered by their employers so that the rest of America can eat meat. And the agricultural workers who are continuing to pick fruit and vegetables for low wages in our fields. And the healthcare workers. Their work, perhaps more than any other, is a labor of love, a calling whose reward is the saving of lives. Love's labor found is people surviving the pandemic. According to a report by Kaiser Health News and the Guardian newspaper just 4 weeks ago, over 900 healthcare workers have died of COVID-19, and the toll is rising. When Sherry read us our opening remarks today, she had the number 600, which I had given her. Since I gave her that number, I found that the number is actually 900 healthcare workers in this country who have died, and most of them were people of color, and many of them, in fact, most of them were nurses. Dire shortages of life-saving protective gear like the N95 masks, gowns, and gloves have exposed healthcare workers to life-threatening conditions. The tallies of fatalities includes doctors, nurses, and paramedics, as well as support staff such as hospital custodians, administrators, and nursing home workers. Many of these deaths were preventable. Compounding the problem across the country, many of you may not be aware of this, that our healthcare workers have been denied workers' compensation insurance because workers' compensation insurers have claim that COVID-19 is not a work-related injury, and therefore healthcare workers who suffer from it are not entitled to workers' compensation insurance benefits. About 14 states have legislation pending to change that, including Pennsylvania. A bill was put before the legislature back in April, but I don't know where it's going. It may not be going anywhere. Summer, being an especially important time for children, many of us have been thinking about children and young adults lately. I know I have. Children are not just dependents who receive things. They are full participants in the daily lives of our community. And that's why I chose today's Story for All Ages, a true story about children working for justice in our world. In the last few months, our kids have gone through a lot. Their lives have been changed forever. The video you just watched before my homily was a fictional reflection in the future by one of today's kids, now all grown up, looking back on the summer of 2020. In the video, the grown-up kid's daughter had asked him about the summers of his youth, and after reflecting on summers like I just reflected a few moments ago, he reflected upon this summer. And I'm not sure if you were able to follow Richard Rankin's Scottish brogue. I'll translate some of it for you, or some of the things he said. The longest summer was the one that started when it was cold and seemed to last forever. I thought I knew what was happening, but I didn't really. I knew I was in my own small world within our house that we never seemed to leave. Being homeschooled, masks, endlessly washing my hands, my friends only existing on a screen. What memories our kids will have of this summer. And the song that follows this opening narrative really captured some of the things that I've been thinking about as we move through the pandemic. I'm going to share some of the lyrics of that song with you now. Close friends stand apart, but somehow they seem closer to one another's heart. Isn't that just the truth? The lyrics continue. There's more life than before, as everyone remembers what's still outside the door. There are signs that life's still there, not locked inside, but waiting to appear. So true. And there are signs, not just in this wonderful summer weather, but in the community that is this congregation, that there is life and things outside, things going on, things that will not be suppressed by the pandemic. Last weekend, I attended a retreat of the lay leadership of this church, and it produced a really good new mission and vision statement that will be presented to you all for approval in the next few weeks. And some other great things came out of the lay leaders retreat last Saturday. Yes, this was the longest summer we have known. And what do we remember now it's gone? I'll use the words of the lyrics of that song again. The way the world had to transform. You change yourself, you change the norm. And the rainbows come after the storm. Like everyone else, we have changed ourselves. We've been transformed, and there's a new normal in our lives, and as well as in this church. A new normal to which we're all beginning to adapt, like reflexively reaching for face masks when we leave our house, something we never would have thought of several months ago. A few months ago, one of my minister colleagues pointed out to me that we Unitarian Universalists, when something bad happens, we happen to go from a strong reaction like anger or outrage to action. We organize and we march and we write letters What we don't do often is take time to step back and just lament, to grieve. The last 7 or 8 months have given us more reasons to grieve and lament than any in modern history, certainly more than in my lifetime. It's 41 years since I moved to America, and I don't remember anything like this COVID pandemic happening to our country. And nor do I remember a time when our country has been so politically divided, so extreme. As I wrote last week in my monthly minister column, it's okay for us to grieve and lament at this time, especially those families of our community who are navigating what to do with young children who've already missed so many months of school and for whom the school year to come is still so uncertain. In his letter to the Hebrews in the New Testament, the Apostle Paul wrote, "Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen." Despite the pandemic and of all the things that are going on in the world, I am feeling tremendous faith and hope in the future at this time. My hope comes from my faith in the human condition and in the ultimate resiliency and strength of American institutions of government. We need look no further than our children and young people and see how they have been transformed and transformed us and changed the norm. Look at that, and it's hard not to have faith in the future. We all have favorite summers that we look back on during our lives, but it's the future that we care about more, and the future is exciting because it's so full of possibilities. One day, our kids and grandkids will look back on this pandemic, not with nostalgia, but with pride, and they'll echo the song that we just played for you. You change yourself, you change the norm, and rainbows come after the storm. I know that we all fear that the next several months will be very challenging for many, many reasons. Yet as I look at this church and its people and at our community, as I think about our children and youth, I feel certain that rainbows will come after this storm. May it be so. Blessed be. Amen. Closing hymn, Lean on Me. I hope you can watch it at home and feel free to sing a song, sing along.
Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on. Sing this with me. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Hey. Lean on me. You can lean on me. You can lean on me. Brother, you can lean on me. Lean on me. Sister, you can lean on me. You can lean on. Hey. Lean on me. You can lean on me. Lean on me. You can lean on me. You can lean on. Lean on me. Lean on. You can lean on me. Lean on me. You can lean on me. Lean on. 'Cause you're gonna need somebody to lean on.
As we extinguish our chalices here in the sanctuary and at your homes, please join in saying the words that appear on your screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Thank you so much, Sherry. This past week, I had the pleasure of officiating at the wedding ceremony of two of our members, and their vows reminded me of this poem that was written just a few months ago by one of my colleagues, Reverend Dr. Lynn Unger. The poem is called Pandemic. What if you thought of it as the Jews consider the Sabbath, the most sacred of times? Cease from travel, cease from buying and selling, give up just for now, or trying to make the world different than it is. Sing, pray, touch only those to whom you commit your life. Center down. And when your body has become still, reach out with your heart. Know that we are connected in ways that are terrifying and beautiful. You could hardly deny it now. Know that our lives are in one another's hands. Surely that has come clear. Do not reach out your hands, reach out your heart, reach out your words, reach out all the tendrils of compassion that move invisibly where we cannot touch. Promise this world your love, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, so long as we all shall live. May your roots grow deep. May your branches grow wide. Our worship this morning has ended, but our service now begins. Go in peace, go in love, go in joy. Next week, we'll all see you at our Water Communion In Gathering, a multi-gen service that Matt Shinneman is working on. I hope we will see you there. Thanks so much for being here today. Take care.
I think you better dance now.
First there was just one, now there's thousands of them.
Are they trying to tell us something?
So what's the problem? Well, among other things, we are messing with their food chain.
And we have got to do something about it.
We suggest a ban on all marine harvesting.
Why do anything at all?
They're just a bunch of lifeless boys at the bottom of the world.
So what are we going to do about it?
Share. Ban up the sign, no fishing.